This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Tuesday edition of Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. Zach, how's the Tuesday going?
It's going pretty good. It's not bad. The weather's a little chilly, but not too bad.
Can't complain.
No. Started school today, getting a little work done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, first time in
Back in school. How's that feel?
Weird. It's like 8 years. 8 years removed.
You could be like, I always really actually felt like those non-traditionals that would go to school and in actual classes back when you could do that more, you'd run into your college class and you have the occasional 40-plus-year-old there.
Ish.
And I gave them a lot of, like, you know what? You're clearly going after a goal. I feel like it would be super awkward probably to sit there with a bunch of 18 to 24-year-olds most likely, and that would be really uncomfortable. But I had kid you not, one of my classes freshman year, communication classes, I had an 84-year-old woman.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was her lifelong goal, was to complete college, never got a degree. So she was a few courses short of what she wanted to do. I think it was like I can't remember what it was, some writing degree or something. I don't know, but yeah, she got it done.
That's cool.
Pretty impressive, right?
I will say I'm excited to get back. I will say the best part about it is it's all asynchronous, so there's no set time. I can just do class whenever I feel like it,
that's nice.
I think it's a lot better that way, because who has the time to wake up at like 7 in the morning and go sit through like 4 hours of class in the middle of the day?
Not me.
Not me.
So today was first day back, right, for Oklahoma State. I always had the issue with online classes. I'll be completely honest.
I love online classes.
I loved them, but the motivation was like, I can literally put this off until the very last second, and no one will know.
I was that way too, and I feel like I feel more motivated with it now, because when I was in school, that's the reason I'm going back now. Because
procrastination.
I was a terrible student. I'm going into it pretty excited. Like I'm looking forward to finishing. So
yeah.
And plus I don't have to deal, like, the other non-traditionals are like, I feel like even though technically I am, because I'm 29, I feel like I'm not a non-traditional.
Nah.
Because when I look at non-traditionals, it's like 40, 45, 50, and they're super annoying because they got roller backpacks.
See,
and they sit in the front and ask all the questions.
Yeah.
But looking like, if I had questions, I would want them answered. I wouldn't want to just sit there because non-traditionals are probably paying for it themselves.
No, yeah, absolutely.
They're probably not taking out loans.
The grind is there, so that's why I respect it.
If I don't understand something, I'm probably going to ask it, and you got some snot nose in the back who's just like, shut up, Grandma. Like, I get it now.
That's why I'm saying it's got to be insanely uncomfortable.
I will say that's the beauty of online classes, though. I don't have to deal with kids. Don't have to deal with Zoom calls. That's another thing. No Zoom. It's all asynchronous. They just upload everything online.
What a time.
It's a treat.
What a time.
It's a real treat.
It's good stuff, man. So hopefully everyone had a great first day back here at Oklahoma State. And we're going to get into some OSU stuff here shortly. Frank Bonner is going to join us at 3:25 as always on Tuesday. I want to start off the show, Zach, looking at what's become more of a hot topic again in the sports world, because we're sitting here with another season almost come and gone in the National Football League, and head coaches have been taking new jobs. We've seen the Rams job recently taken. The Falcons job has been filled, as we know. The Rams job, the Chargers job has been taken. The only two that are open right now, the Jets have as well, the Texans and the Eagles. Now, people look at this and they say, and the big topic that comes from this is, well, let's take a look at what coaches are available or what candidates are available. And as you can see by the latest hire with the Chargers, literally anybody in the league is available. Now, the Jags obviously outsourced a little bit and grabbed a former college coach and got there. So it's always funny to see where teams end up grabbing their new head coaches from, and sometimes it's not the candidate you would think. But the big topic has been around, again, that Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy has not received a head coaching job. And I talked to Andy Reid this week, and he was like, hey, I hope he gets a job, as always. Like, I hope he gets a head coaching job. Something opens up, and that should be great, and he would make a great fit for wherever he goes, and all that good stuff. There's still a chance that he could get hired, and the NFL kind of laxed off their rules where initially you would not be able to speak with a team if you were still in the playoffs. So that wouldn't be the case for Bieniemy. They laxed off of that, and he can actually do that right now. So he could talk to the Eagles or the Texans if they so desired. But to me, there's 3 possible reasons why Eric Bieniemy has not been hired as a head coach. Okay, 1, the new rule that has been instituted this season about hiring minorities in the NFL. Right, the goal of that rule from the league was to get more coaches of minority hired in the league. Now, what it does is if the team loses a coach of minority to another team, then that team that lost the coach receives 2 extra draft picks. Okay, so it's pretty heavy incentive there. But who in the world, if you think about it, would want to give Kansas City, out of all teams, 2 extra draft picks, right? I mean, you can go down a list of teams and say, this team could surely benefit here and here and here, but there's a handful of teams, and 4 of them right now happen to be left in the playoffs, so you would say, wouldn't really honestly want to give 2 draft picks away to either of those 4 teams. Now, Kansas City's certainly one of them. And I wrote a piece earlier this year because I thought that the Chargers would be an excellent fit for Eric Bieniemy. But I truly believe that the rule that they've tried to institute here has backfired from its original intentions. Because if you look at it from a Charger standpoint, you have to ask yourself, do we want to take Eric Bieniemy in and have a possible, like the rewards could be infinite, right? Like we could turn this franchise around, we could be in the playoffs, who knows where we could go from here. Or we could give our rival in the division 2 extra picks, and those end up being big-time issues for us later down the road.
Well, and then, you have to look at it. They're not, sure they would get Eric Bieniemy, which is a huge boost, but you're giving draft picks away. Not just to a rival, but draft picks that you need to make your franchise better. So for some teams, it's beneficial, but if you're the Texans, or you're, let's say, the Jags, or you're the Chargers or the Raiders, or teams that desperately need players to get better, sure, you get a good coach, but can you risk giving up draft picks?
Well, I think the rule, if I remember correctly, is that it's not necessarily giving up from their team. The other team just receives 2 draft picks. But in the same way, you're basically, if you get that guy, if you get Eric Bieniemy, you're handing Kansas City 2 extra draft picks, which in the same sense is what it is. But still.
Well, it's... I don't know.
That's why I didn't understand the whole, I get it. You want more diversity. Mm-hmm. But the idea, because what this does to me is it incentivizes teams that they want to push the head coach opportunity onto another team solely on race. It's like, we should never hire, and that's the case anywhere. No one should ever be hired solely on their race or gender, right? You have to have the qualifications and be able to do your job. I'm saying Eric Bieniemy wouldn't. I think he'd be, an excellent head coach, and that's why it's puzzling to many people why, if you look at some of the coaches that have landed head coaching jobs in this offseason so far, that he's one that's not on the list. The other reason is this. Is it possible he doesn't want to leave Kansas City? I mean, has anyone ever considered that? Because he's got a pretty sweet gig there, if you think about it. He's not the head coach, but he's the offensive coordinator of the best offense in the league.
And you look at what Kansas City's doing. Kansas City doesn't want to lose him. So I'm sure they're doing everything. Not only do they provide him with a rather good offense, but I would imagine that each season when his name starts to get thrown into the mix of, maybe he can go here, maybe he can go there, I'm sure they're like, listen, what can we do to make your stay here more appealing? What can we do? Obviously, you want to be a head coach. I think that's the job of many that get into coaching. You want to be a coach at the top of your profession, which most cases is the NFL, other than a handful of college jobs. But I would have to imagine that Kansas City, they don't want to have to lose him. They don't want to have to go and try to, because how do you replace that? There are good coaches, but you have a sure thing in Bieniemy. Do you want to risk? Well, you go do you, and we'll try to replace you. It's tough.
I think they would be, if they were completely honest, they'd say, yeah, we want him to, if he wants to be a head coach, we would support that, and we want him to succeed in that. But at the same time, and if another season goes by, and for whatever reason, he's not a head coach anywhere else, I'm telling you, the Chiefs organization, like you said, is not crying over this situation.
No.
They're happy that Eric Bieniemy is still the offensive coordinator, especially with what he's done with the quarterback situation there. So the draw is absolutely there. But if his ultimate goal, if you were to ask Eric Bieniemy what his ultimate goal was personally, I wonder where he would rank being a head coach as compared to winning Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. In the National Football League. And if his goal is to win Super Bowls, then he's kind of in the right spot, at least for the best chance. And that's year in and year out if Mahomes stays healthy. Mm-hmm. He just inks a deal for 10 more seasons. I would have to think that Eric Bieniemy is pretty happy with that situation. And also think of it this way. Is it possible that with all the jobs open this year, he was being picky enough to himself where he's like, there's not a job available for me yet that I think is the best fit? Because there will, as we know, every single year, there will be vacancies in the head coaching world in the NFL. And if he didn't see one that was absolutely perfect and met everything he wanted out of that job, which is certainly possible, that's why I thought that the Chargers would be the most appealing because of all the options that they had, all the offensive weapons and what they had in place ready for him to become the best head coach there. However, it goes back to the whole, even if LA really wanted him, do they balance out, we just want him, but we don't want to hand extra picks and all this stuff. But Eric Bieniemy's, I think his option has to be perfect. That's
what I was about to say. You look at what jobs became available this year. I think if Bieniemy wants, if this is his plan, you just ride it out in Kansas City. Because how old's Andy Reid? 62, 63? How much longer is Andy Reid going to want to coach? So let's say Andy Reid wants to coach 3 more years, right? Coach to 65 and retire.
Well, and I forgot what they extended him to. I want to say it was like 3 or 5 maybe. But think about this. Like you said, would Andy Reid ever stop coaching with Mahomes still as a Chief? Do you think? Would he ever call it a career if Mahomes is still there?
I think so, because I don't see... unless something drastic happens, I don't really see Kansas City dropping off anytime soon. And because if you have such a young quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, who his ceiling is so high, but he doesn't appear, as crazy as it sounds, as good as he is, he still gets better a little bit each year. Well, there are players that are going to want to play with Patrick Mahomes. I don't think Kansas City is ever going to have an issue finding offensive talent to put around him because the Super Bowl opportunities are going to be there every single season. Well, if Pat Mahomes sticks around in Kansas City for 12, 15 years and he continues to have a chance to win a Super Bowl every year, Andy Reid is 62 years old, going to turn 63 in March. Can't imagine Andy Reid is going to coach for another 10 to 12 years.
Hey, he could pull a Tom Coughlin and coach into his 70s.
He could, but I don't, like, realistically, I don't see Pat leaving, and I don't see Andy Reid coaching for the entire tenure.
I mean, because he's, barring some crazy thing happening for Mahomes in his career, he's there for the next 10 seasons.
Well, and didn't Andy Reid, before he got to Kansas City, didn't he have a health scare before he lost a little bit of weight?
I think that's correct.
So I can't imagine that he's, I'm not saying that he's just going to kill over.
That would be interesting, though.
But
if he, what I'm saying would be interesting would be, though, if he did call it a career halfway through Mahomes' extension, and then Eric Bieniemy happens to be there, which I think would probably be rare as well.
Probably be a bit of a long stretch.
Yeah, but that is interesting. Would he take over?
With him being 62, it very possibly could be, you know what, we're going to let him coach for a few more years and we'll hand it off.
If Andy Reid were to step aside today, Eric Bieniemy would step in immediately.
And I think most Kansas City fans would be okay with it.
I absolutely agree. So those were my first two. The last reason I have, which this one is probably far-fetched, but it is possible that he's not a great interview. Okay,
sure.
I would be.
I was not.
That's what I'm going at. That's where I'm going. It's not easy for some people to interview. Now, can you imagine? Because we've all interviewed for jobs, but can you imagine interviewing for a head coaching job of an NFL team?
Well,
I think the pressure's there.
That and especially you look at like you mentioned, you look at the teams, the organizations that became available. The Texans. I would have to imagine that whoever they bring in, You look at Jacksonville. You look at the Chargers. These teams, New York, before they hired their new head coach. What is the one thing that they need to do from day one? Is win. What can you do? We suck. We don't have any talent. What can you do? What can you bring us? I've won with Pat Mahomes. Okay, well, what can you do with a disgruntled quarterback like Deshaun Watson?
Well, let's see. I think that, yeah. Well, it's one thing, too, because now you're not even getting to do in-person interviews, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you have to do them over the computer. It's different, right? Like, before I got this job, I was driven out to South Dakota to interview for a radio station. And that's how much that the guy wanted to see how I was in person, right? There's a lot that you can take away from that.
Absolutely.
Now, it's different a little bit maybe for Eric Bieniemy because he's on national television all the time and you kind of know what he does. But you want to get the ins and outs. Does he fit in this organization? But I'm glad you brought up the Texans because every single day, the latest news is that that Deshaun Watson's basically demanding a trade to get out of there. Well, if that's the case, and if the Texans really, really want to keep him, like if they have any interest at all, and not risking him pulling a James Harden when the season comes around or anything like that, right? They would hire Eric Bieniemy.
Yes.
Like they would get. We already know that Deshaun Watson wants him there. Now it would make the organization and everybody would understand. Okay, they folded to their quarterback, but in a way, you would probably understand it a little bit because you want to keep him around. Like it's different. It'd be different if this was a mid-tier quarterback.
Absolutely.
This is a top 10 QB. If you want to keep him around and you want to build, the Texans hire Eric Bieniemy like today. And they stop all this drama. And it's not like the Texans, it's interesting because I think they have issues, obviously, with the front office, but it's not like they're like a just complete recent disaster of an organization. They've been a playoff team. They've had success. There's been a lot worse teams than them. However, it's making it come off that way with the way Deshaun Watson is acting, and there's no culture there. So if the Texans wanted things shored up in terms of keeping their quarterback, you would take a chance on Eric Bieniemy. Yes, you'd be giving a couple picks to the Chiefs, but it might end up being worth it because it's basically a win-win for you if you can hold on to Deshaun Watson. And the chances of Eric Bieniemy failing drastically, I think, are much lower than him succeeding at a high level.
Well, I think you kind of hit it there. You look at the amount of money that the Texans were willing to pay a young quarterback in Deshaun Watson. Now, I'm not saying that Deshaun Watson's unproven, but with such a young quarterback, you're willing to pay him dozens of millions of dollars a year in order to keep him in your town. That right there is, okay, we're willing to do what it takes for you. I wouldn't consider it, well, if we hire Eric Bieniemy, we're going to be folded and it's going to make us look weak, and maybe that kind of, that's probably not a good look. If you're the Texans, do what it takes.
That's why it never.
Do what it takes.
That's why it didn't make sense when it came out that they didn't even request an interview after he had said that. It's like, okay, if there's a parent word and Deshaun Watson says, hey, they told me I can have some say in the hiring process. Yeah. And even if you let him and you 100% didn't even bring in his preferred candidate for at least an interview at the first part of it. It's like, really? Like, where are you? So there's obviously some miscommunication there, or the ownership really doesn't care and they don't have to. To be honest, I said it earlier, they don't have to care what Deshaun Watson says. They don't have to bring him in and have him put any say into what they do hiring. But I would think it's okay with a quarterback of this level to try and see if the head coach he wants wouldn't be a good fit. And it just so happens that Eric Bieniemy has the best resume out of anyone that was available this offseason and still does. And before it's all said and done, he could have another Super Bowl to his name. Who knows? I just think that if the Texans wanted things fixed, they would do it like today. They would go back on everything they said and be like, you know what? We had a mess here, but we want things fixed. Eric Bieniemy is our future. He's going to bring in an incredible system to Deshaun Watson, who's young, talented, healthy. We're going to start building a little bit with some pieces, and next thing you know, we're relevant again. So there's a win-win situation just lying there. Question is, will the Texans actually do it? But I don't think, because we hear all these crazy, the takes all the time, that the reason Eric Bieniemy isn't hired is solely based on race. I just don't buy that. There's talk about that all over the NFL. There's not enough of minority head coaches, and this reason is solely because there's racism abound. I just don't buy that. If you look at all of the available coaches that are out there, and you look at some of the resumes, and you look at the reasons I just gave, it makes sense for why some of these people are in some of the positions they are. It would shock me to no end if the LA Chargers or the Houston Texans or whatever looked at all these candidates and they said, oh my gosh, this guy over here has less experience than Eric Bieniemy, but his skin tone is different, so that means we're going to hire him. Does that make any sense at all? It just doesn't. So I'm confident Eric Bieniemy's going to get a job. Like, I know he is at some point. The question is, though, I think bottom line, is there one that he, like, if he were to ask about the Texans, they said, hey, do you want the Texans job? Would he actually look into the mirror and say, I want everything that they have to offer? There's a lot of risk involved, because you see how things are communication-wise. And you're like, can I be the glue there? Can I fix things enough for the Texans?
Well, and you got to look into talent on the field as well.
He knows it's not going to come right away.
No. If you're Eric Bieniemy, you got to look at this. Not only are you looking at the front office, are you looking at the mess you're fixing to go into, but you're looking at, okay, what has this mess done to my locker room? We're going to have to get, they're going to have to replace J.J. Watt because he's not there anymore. You obviously got rid of your receiver talent. Do they have a great running back?
No.
Probably not.
They got a running back in return for DeAndre Hopkins, even though it was an aged running back.
Yeah, you're gonna have to rebuild that franchise, which is gonna take at least 2 to 3 years. Can you handle dysfunction for 2 to 3 years before you can even have a shot at being competitive?
Hey, you want to talk about a complete culture shock opposite from Kansas City, the Texans?
Yeah.
Where the Chiefs are as shored up as any organization, and then you don't know what's going on in Houston? That's a complete opposite of what you're used to, man. A lot involved there. Interesting story to keep up with. But Eric Bieniemy, he's going to get a job. We know that. It's just a matter of when he decides, I think, basically. You get him on Twitter at ZLancaster91. I'm at ThePattyWheels. When we come back, Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World's going to join us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Stay tuned.
You can call till your voice is running out, but I can't hear you now. I can't hear you now. I'm somewhere far away where you can't bring me down, so I can't hear you now. I can't hear you now. Yeah. Run.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. Tuesday edition, as always, on Tuesdays. Joining us now, Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World. Frank, how's it going today?
Going all right. Wishing there was some basketball to cover.
Yeah, we're definitely in the same boat, because I think tonight would have been West Virginia, right? Yeah, would have West Virginia tonight. Obviously, would have had Oklahoma last Saturday. So that's kind of what I wanted to lead you into with this, Frank, because for you, does Oklahoma State having this time off, does that help them coming off that win against Kansas, or does it hurt them, since next up is, by the way, Baylor?
I think it would hurt them more than it would help them, because coming off that Kansas win, I mean, they had a lot of momentum, and so, that kind of gets halted because of this time off and the COVID issues, and so I think it hurts them more than it does help them, because it's not like they needed a rest. They needed to keep pushing with that, riding that high off that big win.
Well, and we listening to what Boynton had said this morning. Someone had asked him, they're not back on, they're not in the facility yet. They've been out of the facility since, at the very least, Friday of last week. That's when we found out that they had shut things down. But it's with them canceling the Zoom call on Wednesday, it's very possible they've been out of the facility since Wednesday or Thursday. So and they're hoping they don't even know when they're going to get back onto the practice floor. They may not get to practice until tomorrow or Thursday. So I think that some time is beneficial if they were still practicing, but at this point, I don't know how much benefit they're going to have.
Yeah, and it's not like you're getting ready to play against a team that you feel like you can, you're you're that much better than or so on. You're playing against the number 2 team in the country. So I think you need all the practice you can get.
Yeah, it's not Kansas State or Iowa State by any means right now. It's coming up. So this weekend, Frank, how cool is it to see D. Mitchell receive that scholarship the way that he did with Coach Boyden showing up at his job in Walmart and surprising him?
I mean, I think that's the sports stories we like to see, right? I mean, Boyden has always spoke highly of D. Mitchell, and it sounds like, he's an athlete who does everything right, and to pick up a job because he has to help, pay tuition and other means, to see some of that burden get left off of him with a scholarship. I mean, there's no way you can't look at that video and not feel good about it.
Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World joined us here on the afternoon sports drive. I'm kind of on the opposite of that, Frank. Did it surprise you to see the Montreal Pena ended up not staying with Oklahoma State?
I was surprised that it happened like in the middle of the season. I felt like if something like that was going to come out, maybe at the end of the season he decided to leave or so on. I mean, I have no idea what the personal reasons are. I was surprised to see that happen at this time in the middle of the year.
I'd be curious to know when he actually left, because he hasn't been here. We haven't seen him in practice photos, practice videos. We haven't seen him on the sideline. He wasn't dressed out. So I'd be curious if he's been gone for a while, or if he's just kind of stuck around and it just now got out, because obviously to give D. Mitchell a scholarship, there had to be one available. And before it came out, common sense would tell you that it was Montreal Pena, because you haven't heard from him. So how long has he actually been gone? Because if he's been gone for a couple months, man, for that not to get out, that's impressive.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think, and from my understanding, they wanted to release that a little earlier than what it came out, and so for them to be able to keep that under wraps until they were ready to have it come out, you usually don't see that. Usually somebody breaks something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Boyden was a little irritated.
Yeah,
when he was like, "Well, I kind of wanted to wait to do this and do it myself, but Montreal Pena is not with the program anymore." He was a little peeved off.
Frank, so we talked about Baylor a little bit there, but how confident are you that OSU, I'm not saying win necessarily, but can compete with them like they have with all these other teams in the Big 12? Because we know that for most of these conference games, they've either been in a sizable lead at times or they've been right there with all the teams they played.
Well, I know this isn't the Kansas team that people are necessarily would expect it to see, but seeing the way that they competed against Kansas, you've got to feel like they can compete against anybody. Now, I know Baylor looks, significantly better than Kansas, but that game should give you reason to feel that OSU can at least be in the game late.
Yeah, I think it has to give you hope. I think if, and I said this after the Kansas game last week, if Oklahoma State plays the remainder of their games as well as they did against Kansas, even allowing that little bit of run from Kansas, because it wasn't their OSU's performance during when they allowed KU to come back wasn't as bad as how it was against West Virginia or Texas. So I think if OSU plays the rest of the games the way they played Kansas, I think they go over 500 in the remaining games. I mean, that they played well enough. Now you have to question how good Baylor really is, because they took it to Kansas last night. I mean, Kansas didn't really hold a prayer.
Yeah, and to piggyback off the point that you made, I do think there is something to be said about the struggles in the runs that they allow, because you can't expect to be up 16 every game. Mm-hmm. Like if the score was, if they were up 5 or the score was close to being tied and they let Kansas do that, OSU doesn't get back into that game. They won because they had that big lead. Well, they may not be able to sustain a big lead like that every single game. So you got to prevent those situations from even happening, because every game won't be like that.
that's actually what I was going to ask you next, Frank, was that if you thought that was it possible for Oklahoma State to jump out to a big lead on a team like Baylor, like we've seen against Kansas and earlier in the season as well, where West Virginia and not just like you said, not just a 5-6 point lead, but up double digits or more. Is that something that a trend that can continue against a Baylor team?
I think at this point, them coming off of COVID and the break that they had against a really good Baylor team, I think it makes it that much more difficult for them to come out, guns blazing and get up to a 12, 15-point lead and kind of force Baylor to crawl back in. I think if OSU is going to win this game, I think they're going to have to keep it close the entire game, because I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get that lead. I don't see OSU getting a similar lead that they had in these last games.
Frank Bonner joining us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. So we had this question, or this topic kind of posed with us the other day with another guest we had on, looking at and talking about how we know that Cade is Oklahoma State's number one option, right, every single game. But, and I pose this to you as well, who would you say do you think has the best chance maybe to kind of settle in as that second go-to pure scoring option? Not just the second guy that can get you a rebound or an assist when you need it, or a defensive stop, but a second guy that's going to go out there and get you points. Who do you think has the best chance to settle into that role?
I think it has to be Isaac, because for one, Isaac is the bona fide leader of this team, and two, when Isaac gets going, things happen for OSU. I mean, we saw it's the same as last year. I mean, when Isaac was playing at his best, the team was playing at their best. I mean, there's something to that. Like Isaac, even with Cade there, I feel like in a lot of ways, Isaac is still the pulse of this team, because he doesn't take bad shots. So if Isaac is putting up 12 shots, they're going to be 12 really good shots, and a lot of them are going to go down. And so I think Isaac needs to be that second scoring option, because I think he needs to continue having a more volume of shot attempts.
So we got the win over Kansas, and know that, and it was the 6th ranked team in the country. If that were to stick with that and they come out and beat the number 2 team in the country with Baylor, those two combined wins, if that happens, does Oklahoma State get in the top 25 after that?
I think without question. I mean, I would be like completely shocked if they beat Baylor and don't crack the top 25. I actually thought they had a pretty good shot at cracking the top 25, this last week, and they were, they weren't in there. But I don't know how you can justify keeping them out of the top 25 if they beat Baylor this weekend.
Because they're third, right? Third in receiving votes, I think. So technically 28th. Yeah. If they beat number 2, now I don't think they jump to like 18 or 19, but I think it's very feasible for them to jump to 21, through 25 for sure.
Yeah, 2 top 10 wins. You gotta, even if you don't. People may think they're not going to stay there or whatever. You got to kind of reward a team for having 2 top 10 wins in their last, 2 games.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially back to back, right? That definitely helps.
Well, and you look at the storyline and knocking off Baylor. You test positive for COVID on Wednesday or Thursday. You miss again. You miss almost 2 weeks, because you go back to the was it Monday or Tuesday they played Baylor. So you're a few days shy of not playing for 2 weeks and not practicing for at least a week. So that would be impressive.
With that being said, Frank, we talk about Baylor coming up here. So I know it's a few days away, but what prediction can you give us for the outcome of this one?
Yeah, good luck.
My predictions are horrible now. I was right about Texas Tech, and I think that was the last game I was right about.
Yeah, you notice I didn't bring up that you picked Kansas to win. Partly because I was kind of in the same boat with a lot of other people.
And it sucks that I have to go this way, but I just, with the pause that they have had and everything, I do see Baylor winning this one. I don't have a margin or a point prediction on this one, but I'm not sure because OSU has to play like at the top of their game to beat Baylor, and I don't know if they're going to be able to play, 100% their potential coming off of this shutdown. So I've got to go with Baylor.
I think in order to do so, you have to put together the first half against West Virginia and the first half against Kansas, and even then, I'm not discounting the talent that Mike Boyne has put together. I'm not discounting the as good as this team can be, because at times we've seen it. They could compete amongst anyone in the country. Baylor is just so good, and you've got a week and a half, almost 2 weeks of not playing basketball at all. That's not a good combination.
Well, we all love what ifs. So, Frank, let me throw you a classic what if here. If Oklahoma State had played like scheduled and beaten Oklahoma, and let's say they knocked off West Virginia, so you got 3 wins coming into this.
Those are pretty emotional wins, too.
Coming into this Baylor game, would you be picking different or no?
Yeah, I would have given them a shot.
Okay.
If I think I would have leaned towards OSU if they would have won those 2 games coming off that Kansas win. Because then they would have been playing some of their best basketball at this moment. I would have given it to OSU to knock off Baylor.
Yeah, because I think if you do that, you knock off Kansas, you figure out a way to beat OU at home, you figure out a way to go to Morgantown and beat West Virginia. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that run issue is no. I don't think it's a factor anymore.
Yeah, and you go into that game like from that locker room, and not from a cocky standpoint, but more from a confidence standpoint, they go into that game, thinking that they're the better team, whether, it's looked at that or not. That locker room would have felt like they can beat anybody in the country. Not saying they don't feel like that now, but they would have had the success to back that up.
Yeah, for sure. Frank Bonner joined us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. All right, let me flip you over here to football real quick before we let you go. Were you surprised to see Colby Harvell-Peel announce that he's going to be coming back this year?
Yeah, I don't really see that a whole lot. It was 7 days after he announced he was declaring, then he decided he was coming back.
I think that's right.
I'm assuming, intel he got, maybe he didn't like where he was positioned in the draft or whatever. But yeah, I was surprised to see him double back on his decision. I think it's the right decision. I think him staying will serve him better. So he made the right decision. But I was surprised to see him flip on it.
Well, last thing then, when talking about him and what he's brought to this team, how big of an impact do you expect him to have with this defense coming up this season? Losing a few pieces, obviously, but him being a big reason for their success. What kind of impact do you expect from him in his senior season?
Huge. I think he's gonna have a big impact, and I think this season he'll get some of the national recognition that he may felt like he had deserved that he didn't get, these last 2 seasons. And so I think this will be a big year for him and how he helps the defense, but it also will be a big year for him individually in terms of personal accolades.
Good stuff as always, Frank. Thanks so much for joining us, and hopefully when we talk to you next time, we can actually, if anything, we can hopefully be talking about at least a game that Oklahoma State has played in.
Hey, and if I'm wrong about them losing, that's a trend. Maybe I should just keep picking them to lose.
I'm fully expecting. That's against every team too. I don't care. I don't care if we got to schedule a D3 team. You're going to have to pick them to beat Oklahoma State from now on.
All right. If they beat Baylor, I got you.
Frank, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, that's Frank Bonner. Appreciate his time as always. You can follow him on Twitter at Frank_Bonner too. That has to happen, right? I mean, if he picks there like he did and Oklahoma State upsets Baylor, yeah, he can no longer pick Oklahoma State to ever win again.
I was going to say, all you have to do, Frank, is just pick OSU to lose for the rest of the year, because you're either going to be right or you're going to be wrong, but Oklahoma State still wins, so it kind of cancels out.
And he'd be like, hey, listen, everybody, I'm not saying that I don't believe in Oklahoma State. It's all a superstition.
Oklahoma State goes to Iowa State.
It's a trend.
They're going to lose.
Yeah, it's a trend. Hey, Fort Hays State comes in because they feel good after beating Kansas State this year.
Sorry.
No competition.
No chance, Oklahoma State. And then they win, and then you're the hero.
That's how.
Put it on your resume.
That's how Frank's seen, anyways. He's a hero.
Frank's right? Like that picking goldfish. If you're right, it's amazing because it's fish. But if you're wrong, it's a fish.
You're right. It's amazing. It's a win-win.
Yeah. No one cares.
When we come back in the afternoon, the fish cares. When we come back on the afternoon sports drive, we're gonna take a look at. So we talked about Tennessee yesterday.
Oh boy.
Well, it was on your what you learned.
Oh.
Well, the story has
I'm not sure.
taught us even more.
I'm not sure if what has transpired is true. I'm not sure Jeremy Pruitt's got a chance. That lawyer don't got a chance.
Find out what Zach is talking about next here on the afternoon sports drive.
Whoa.
Staring as I go, I gave until my soul hurt, and never told them so. They're watching as I fall.
It's the afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Zach Lancaster. We're hanging out on this Tuesday. Hope everybody's having a great time out there on the airwaves, the app, wherever you're listening, online. So many ways to hear our wonderful voices out there. Appreciate it. Everybody have a great Tuesday. We are, and I'll tell you why. Because we talked about the Tennessee disaster, right, yesterday, where Jeremy Pruitt's fired, and so are 9 total assistants from the staff. It's like they grabbed a bunch of them and tossed them to the curb because they found out that there was some illegal action going on, handing recruits some benefits. It's illegal in college football. Now, what makes this story so much juicier today is that Dan Patrick, who you can hear him on Fox Sports Radio right all the time, he's turned into this like ultimate college football insider. This year he was the one breaking all the Big Ten stuff. Like I think he had the news first about there was rumors that the Big Ten wasn't going to play. Then he broke that I'm pretty sure that was all what he did, and he had all that going on. So now it's like, wow, he turned into College Football Insider. It says a source on his show. He came on today and said a source told him that not only were there improper benefits, but this is exactly how it was done. They had assistants on the team handing McDonald's bags full of cash to the players. Now, what I can imagine here is, because there's people, and they call it sloppy, which it was sloppy, but a lot of people immediately rip and say, how could you be that lazy and do it like, but think about it here for a second. Was it stupid because there's a chance you get caught? Yes, but at the same time, it's kind of genius to me.
It is, because when you host, now obviously it didn't happen during the pandemic.
Right.
It had to have happened prior to last year in March. But when you host kids on visits, especially official visits, you got to provide everything. You pay for the entire trip to and while you're there and from. So it's not out of the realm of possibility they pulled a Donald Trump, and instead of providing a delicious steak dinner, they just said, hey, you're a 16-year-old kid. Would you like this bag of McDonald's that may or may not have $3,000 in it?
Hey. That's why I immediately thought, like, this has a hint of genius in it to me. Mm-hmm. Because also, who else would think? That's a 16, an 18 or whatever kid with a McDonald's bag. Yeah. That's not suspicious at all. That's completely normal. But my question is, did this continue going on? Like, even when on campus and stuff, did they have, like, the drive-through set up where it's like, hey, coach, give me that 2 for $5 with the Big Mac and the nuggets, and I'll take 5 G's on the side.
I'll take the Tennessee special.
That's all it was called. It was the Tennessee special.
Yeah, it's Coach Pruitt here.
Yeah. What can I get you today?
Can I get 6 Tennessee specials? Give us a couple minutes. We gotta go to the freezer.
Excuse me, sir. Pull around. we
need you to whip it into spot number 3.
We'll be right out with the order.
What I will say, all of this is so crazy. I wouldn't expect Dan Patrick to have messed this up, right? I mean, he seems pretty reputable, simply because he doesn't break things. Like, does that make sense?
No, it does. It does.
What's bad about this is, like I mentioned yesterday in my What Have I Learned?
Yeah.
Tennessee comes out, fires Jeremy Pruitt. So Jeremy Pruitt's lawyer fires back this big old essay saying that the firing was premeditated, and they had made this decision back in the fall, and so now they're coming up with all these allegations for a just firing. They don't have to pay him anything, and so you're like, all right, fighting back. I like that. Good for you. You need another job, and you can't get another job if you got a show clause, whatever. Well, like all of a sudden, Tennessee's like, I guarantee that it was someone in the Tennessee department, athletic department, called up Dan Patrick and is like, hey, we go way back. Jeremy Pruitt, he's, saying that all these allegations are false and they're going to take us to court. Well, I got physical evidence that they were handing out the Tennessee special. You know what I'm saying?
I wonder if the source, too, was like, they weren't planning on revealing this unless it came to it.
Yeah.
And Jeremy Pruitt's lawyer basically forced their hand. They're like, well, now we have to prove it. We're going to throw this McDonald's stuff at them.
Well, and I think, we were talking about it during the break. The worst part about this, let's say this McDonald's thing turns out to be true and they were paying recruits. We all know the SEC pays players. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. The SEC cheats. They pay recruits, they pay their players, whatever. Can you prove it? Probably not.
I would say that happens at all Power 5 conferences.
True, but, Tennessee, I'm not surprised. But let's say this comes out to be true. Tennessee is like Texas. Print money in the basement. The boosters can give you whatever you want. You have a 100,000 seat plus stadium. You're paying kids, and you still suck.
Yeah.
You're going to lose your job because you're cheating, and you're not even winning championships in the process.
That's what I said.
Just don't get it.
If you're going to cheat, then cheat, for crying out loud.
I don't condone it, but damn, if you're going to do it, man.
Let's go to the phone lines. Call, you're on the afternoon sports drive. What you got for us?
Well, one name that they've been talking about with that job has been Hugh Freeze.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think y'all mentioned that yesterday. I wanted to call in and say, well, you know what? They might as well hire Hugh Freeze because when, first of all, you wouldn't want to hire a coach who has a shady background when you're already in trouble to begin with. But we've seen that happen before, and the only difference between what they it looks like they did at Tennessee and what Hugh Freeze was doing was he was actually giving them bags of weed with a bunch of cash in it, and then maybe a card to a room or just a card from the prostitute herself. So it was prostitution, weed, and cash, and they didn't do a darn thing to Mississippi or to Ole Miss. So, it's like if you can do all of that, get caught, and then they still don't punish the school, they still don't do anything, and they admitted that they did all the stuff because he had to admit it. Because remember, he tried to blame some of that stuff on Coach Nutt, the previous coach at Ole Miss. So Coach Nutt was like, I didn't do that. That's not on me. So he hired a guy that got the phone records.
Yeah.
That was where he had all the phone calls to the prostitute.
Yeah, and at least Ole Miss was winning Sugar Bowls.
Don't go after a guy like that. I mean, a guy like Houston Nutt.
Yeah, it's I thought that too whenever we talked about it yesterday. It's like, they get rid of Jeremy Pruitt for this, and they're like, we get Hugh Freeze, and he's also been experienced. What kind of look would that be for Tennessee?
And I think we found out, you go back, what was it, 2 years ago when Gundy got his raise up to $5 million? I think it was 2 years ago when we found out that he may or may not have flown to Knoxville or may or may not have flown down to Dallas rather to meet with the Tennessee athletic department, whatever. We found out then with Gundy, saying I'm a Cowboy for life. I don't think Mike Gundy is ever going to leave Oklahoma State. But if you're Gundy or any other program, Gundy's kind of unfair, but I think it's what's going on right now kind of guarantees that Gundy's certainly not leaving for Tennessee because whoever takes over that program, the penalties and violations don't leave with the coach that committed the violations. Tennessee is screwed. If they come out and the NCAA or the independent investigators, whoever figures all this stuff out, you go back to what Tennessee had said. The stuff that you have done has caused irreparable damage. Like, Tennessee's in trouble for a while. You got to be a coach. Like, I don't think they're going to be able to hire a coach like Hugh Freeze or, someone like a Mike Gundy that has some kind of reputability or they're a talented coach that can bring in recruits because one, they're not going to be able to get anything done because recruits aren't going to want to come there. Why? Because they don't have a shot at making the postseason anyway. But they're certainly not going to have a chance of making any SEC title games. They're not going to have a chance of making. They may have a 3 or 4 year bowl ban. Who knows? They're certainly not going to be able to make the postseason, the semifinals. Tennessee, if all this is true, they're not going to be able to hire a guy like Hugh Freeze because they're going to have to go after some like 24-year-old analyst straight out of college because that's all who's going to want to do it.
Well, I'm still shocked that they didn't do anything to Ole Miss, which makes me think that, maybe it's an SEC thing, but they refused to punish Ole Miss. And so I'm not so sure that the NCAA does anything to Tennessee. I think if you look at past history, they just go, well, you're in the SEC, so we don't want to do anything to you. We're just going to move on. Now, if it's, there are a lot of other schools around the country who have gotten into trouble for a lot less. Mm-hmm. And, so that just has been driving me crazy ever since all that happened back then. But I agree with what you're saying. They're going to have to take a totally different route. They're either going to have to pay a fortune for someone who is willing to try to come in and fix it, someone who they know can get the job done, or just like you said, take a chance on a young guy that he'll do anything to get a good job. Well, if you go to that school, that's a good setup. And if you're especially young and you get a long-term contract, and they'll give you time to fix the issues, it can happen at a school like Tennessee. But you're right, it's a mess. But I don't trust that the NCAA will handle it the right way. It's just like the OSU basketball issues that's going on. Well, what are you going to do? Give Kansas the death penalty? Well, that's not going to happen. So we'll wait and see what happens with that. Yeah,
trusting the NCAA to do the right thing is kind of a long shot.
All right, thanks, guys.
I appreciate the call.
Yeah, isn't it? It really is.
For sure.
Hey, but you're right. That's what I was going to say about the Tennessee thing, is that it's a recruiting disaster, bottom line. This has been, and it remains to be seen if the NCAA decides, we're finally going to make an example here out of an SEC team. And it kind of makes me wonder, based off the language that you said that was put out there to Jeremy Pruitt, they already know? Does Tennessee already know what's coming down the pipeline here? Have they been made aware?
I would think so. And the way the schools have handled things recently, you look at Oklahoma State, and I think LSU did. LSU self-penalized themselves, and the NCAA with doing so, the NCAA doesn't crack down near as hard. And Oklahoma State's obviously they just get screwed by the NCAA no matter what. But with Tennessee, with the wording that came out in the letter of his firing, I think you're going to see Tennessee implement a lot of I think they're going to self-impose a lot of penalties in hopes that the NCAA is going to say, you know what, you guys are taking a 2-year bowl ban and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. So maybe we're not going to hammer you. Now, Jeremy Pruitt, if this stuff comes out to be true, Jeremy Pruitt may not be able to coach for a while. He might get himself a nice little show.
Yeah, he might be in the biggest pot of hot water. However, if you think about
that and those assistant coaches, because you don't just get rid of an entire coaching staff. Even when a new head coach comes in, half the guys are retained.
Hey, Tennessee could just pull what LSU did this year and wait till they're 3-8 this next season and say, you know what we're going to do?
By the way,
we're going to impose a bowl ban on us this year because we feel like our university needs this punishment.
Right.
That was such a classic move by LSU. Hey, you had LSU with OBJ handing out cash straight up on national television that he claimed was fake, and then you got Tennessee passing around with the McNuggets. I have to think
the Tennessee special, man.
At least, that's my next question. I want to know details. Did they actually put food in the bag with it? Because what if somebody, the players joshing around with the bag and then
throw it away? I don't want McDonald's.
Yeah,
I don't want to, because there's vegan kids out there that like Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham is a vegan.
Well, but I'm not even saying that. Imagine his friend is like, hey, let me grab a fry.
Well, that too.
And he opens the bag and there's just 5 G's sitting
I would rather that happen though than you give some kid here's some McDonald's I don't eat this garbage, and just throw it away.
Refuses to even open the bag.
Right, just tosses it.
Don't care what's in here.
Gives it to his grandma or something.
She's thank you.
Granny's got a new hip.
Granny appreciates that. Yeah, driving the Bentley next time. Yeah. Nice. Oh man, good stuff.
Where'd you get that? Jeremy Pruitt.
Oh, good stuff out of Tennessee. He's a great man. Yeah, that's oh my goodness, a disaster for the Volunteers. Yikes. When we come back in hour number 2, buy or sells right around the corner, and then later on in the show, Colin Coward had something to say that I thought was fairly interesting, Zach, that he showed me about what's going on with the AFC Championship game regarding Patrick Mahomes and will he play. All that coming up in hour number 2 on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
And I don't know
It's hour number 2, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster.
This day is just flying by. Seems like it's
I'm a fan.
really clicking.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
It's because the Tennessee news made all of us think, wow, I'm glad we're not Tennessee fans, right? That's what it was.
Sheesh.
Can you imagine? I found out Oklahoma State, they came out and said, well, they got cash in McDonald's bags and we're just slinging it to everybody. Oh,
Well,
man.
you know, it happened. Not McDonald's, but you go back to the 80s.
True.
You go back to all the violation days, you know, and there were some people that honestly thought the NCAA was going to give Oklahoma State the death penalty. They virtually gave them the death penalty for, you know, through the dark ages of the 90s, you know. So don't complain about Mike Gundy. Look at what he's done.
Hey, it could be worse. Just look at Tennessee.
You could be a different shade of orange. You could be 2 different shades of orange.
That's true.
You could be Tennessee and Texas.
Burnt and whatever you call Tennessee's. It's like a
Hunting.
it's that camo orange that you wear to be seen in the woods.
Orange. What's the
It's like a.
orange sherbet?
I was gonna say it's like a sherbet or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Sherbet.
Sherbet or it's like a Fanta sort of.
I love Fanta.
Yeah, no, it's Fanta.
So
Fanta
good.
orange. All right, let's get into this.
Are you buying?
I'd buy that for $1.
Or are you selling?
You'll pick up the phone and you'll sell, sell, sell.
This is Buy or Sell on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Make money, money, make money.
Buy or sell Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio with Patrick Wheeler, Zach Lancaster. All right, Zach, lead it off.
Buy or sell, Joe Exotic gets pardoned. No, I'm just kidding.
That's a hey, I saw that today, and you know what? Before you were back with me, Jason and I, and even Jordan Bishop when he was on with us, that's like we spend so much time talking about, because I was in the middle of it.
Does
Joe
that not
Exotic.
just feel like 5 years?
Oh yeah,
That doesn't
that's what I
feel
said.
like last March.
No, it feels like 5 years ago for
My
sure.
goodness.
I saw what you sent me, so
Look at that. It's got a roll cage in the back with couches.
it's President Trump talking about pardoning him before he gets out of office, and they have that
It's a Dodge.
that full-on Dodge truck / limo
It's got
waiting for
the
him.
butterfly doors.
This dude, like he if he gets out, endless deals of
Oh my gosh.
social media and television spots and whatever he wants. Like there was never anyone released from prison so happy as when this happens.
And
Like,
he'll be, I think, with everything that's like, with how Tiger King transpired and how it ended up and him going to prison, like, he's coming out like he's saying no one's going to be able to see me until I get my hair done. Like, I don't think there's going to be someone that goes back to prison faster than what he does. And I'm not even kidding. Like, he's going to, like,
okay.
he himself is going to try to go after old Carol Baskins, and I think
he just can't help it.
I think he winds up back in jail. My goodness.
he
'Cause
just can't help it.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
Classic.
All right. So,
All right.
we found out today, it was confirmed that Montreal Pena is no longer with the program. As Boynton said, he opted out, and there is Boynton said, a 50-50 chance that Pena could end up back on the team. They won't know until after this semester is over. Not even the season, but after the semester is over. They're going to discuss whether or not Pena comes back. So, buy or sell, we see Montreal Pena back with the Pokes some point in the future.
Sell, because I think that he has a better opportunity. Like coming into this year, it would have been really beneficial, right, to get some time and develop a little bit, and you would have a much brighter future with Oklahoma State than you probably would anywhere else. However, with that lack of not getting that opportunity, I think his best chance is to move on, maybe not even a D1 school, because there's probably not a ton that are just going to be like, hey, come over here, we're going to guarantee you like playing time and all this, because they haven't seen anything from him in college. So he has the best chance probably to go and take the JUCO route, or something like that, to be like we've seen multiple times with players that end up leaving D1 schools. And he's the personal reason, like he's dealing with stuff, man. Like this is he's bringing this wherever he goes, and then that's something that I know is that it's something that he's dealing with, and it's something he brings with wherever he goes. So with that being said, I think that he does have the better opportunity to maybe go that route where it's like, let me try something else here. If I wind up back in Division I basketball, great. If not, if I really want to keep playing, I try my hand at somewhere, maybe even overseas, go that, just something. I don't think his route is back with Oklahoma State or Division I basketball, because especially with Oklahoma State, I'm just not sure he's ever going to find the time that he wants, even if he were to come back. Like there's nowhere for him to develop at this point.
Yeah, I'm going to sell it as well. I would imagine that he's probably been at least working out. You know, I'd imagine he's been in a gym at some point. Now, whether that's, I think it all depends on when he left Stillwater. But I would have to assume that even if he was still here up until last week, which is a stretch, I think he would have been in a gym. Now, it doesn't appear that he's leaving on bad terms, personal reasons. There's an endless amount of possibilities of personal reasons, but it wasn't like a dismissal. It wasn't like, well, you need to leave because you're a headache, So in that sense, I could see that. Like, I think he could have a chance to come back, but with him not playing, you also have, depending on what the NCAA finds out, you're going to have a scholarship issue next year. So I don't see him coming back. I like you said, I could see him going the JUCO route. I think spending a couple, because technically he still has all of his eligibility left because he never played, so he'll be a red shirt, I guess, technically, if you look at it. So he'd still have 4 years of eligibility left, 2 years at a JUCO, and then I could see him, after bulking up a little bit and getting used to college, I could see him going, because he's athletic enough and he seems talented enough to play D1 basketball. But like you said, with no experience at all, there could be someone that would want to take a chance, but I could see him going JUCO.
Yeah, he would get more playing time that way.
Absolutely.
I mean, plain and simple, he just would. All right, buy or sell that we know that Chuba is entered the draft. Expected to land on a team somewhere this upcoming draft and everything in the NFL. Buy or sell that he's drafted in the first 3 rounds?
I think it is contingent on what he does at. Now, we found out yesterday that the NFL's Pro Day is not going to be held in Indianapolis. On the field stuff is going to be all virtual.
Yep.
So I think it's all going to depend on what he does at his Pro Day and what he does at the Combine, the virtual Combine. He is talented enough and he is athletic enough that if he has a really good Pro Day, then I'll buy that he goes in the first 3 rounds. Now, if he doesn't, because you look at what he did, not this past season, but the season before, 2,000 rushing yards, over 20 touchdowns. The dude was electric. If he has that kind of performance at Pro Day and that kind of performance at the Combine, he puts up, he runs a 4.42, and he reps out 30 reps on the bench and has a ridiculous vertical, and his cone drill is ridiculous, and his 5.10.5 and all his broad jump. If he goes up and puts up ridiculous numbers, yeah, I think he'll be first 3. Now, I'm not saying first, but maybe late second, somewhere throughout the 3rd round possibly. But if he has a similar performance that he did this past season, now we know he was banged up most of the year, but let's say he gets nicked up at some point, he goes in, he's got a tight hamstring or whatever, and he has a subpar or just even an average. If he just has an average Pro Day and an average Combine, I don't think so. I think it's 4th, 5th round. But if he has a really, really good day, he's talented enough, we know what he can do. If his numbers at Pro Day are just ridiculous, then yeah, first 3.
Speaking of the Combine, so remember last year, the kid that was, I forgot his name, but he's
last year or the year before?
Last year, yeah, the kid that's running in right and gets nailed with the football.
Yeah, the ball bounced off his noggin.
Yeah, he turned the wrong way, just gets drilled. He was the guy that got the pick 6 on Lamar Jackson with the Bills.
Cool was that?
How about that?
Hunter, was that the 101?
Yeah, the 101 pick 6.
Yeah.
Never stop. Never stop. Yeah, I thought about that. The thing is with Chuba is, and I'm with you, like he's going to need to show out, obviously, and it's tough. I can't imagine. That's going to be tough, right? Do a little in a virtual setting a bit, I would think. But he's going to need to have a really, really solid pro day, as well as if you look back, 2017, for example, happened to be a gold mine year for running backs in the third round. Like if you look back at that running back class, it was incredible how what talents have come out of that, like Alvin Kamara, like Leonard Fournette and all of them. But it's something, and Kareem Hunt, I think, was in the same one. It's all those guys that are still successful in the NFL. So that you can grab a solid running back late and have a chance for that. Now, as far as Chuba, though, I think the injuries this season, because they all saw what happened the year before, and that was incredible. But the injuries this season, I would say you slightly combine it with some of the offseason stuff that went down and just everything that happened this year for Chuba. I think all of it may have spooked some teams in terms of drafting him higher than maybe expected. So I would push him out of the third round, and I could see him going in the late fourth, somewhere around there. But I will say this, that a team knows that if they do grab him, that it's a high-risk, high-reward situation to me because Chuba could either really pan out for you as an NFL back. They want to see him. I think that's the thing, too. They want to see him catch the ball more and be able to catch the ball more out of the backfield. They wanted to see better pass blocking out of him, which they didn't necessarily see this year with the limited time he played for Oklahoma State. Those are two things they want to improve. But a team that does grab him, if they grabbed him late in the fourth, for instance, the reward, the possibility, potential of what he could do for your team, they're like, this is a sneaky good grab right
Absolutely.
here. He could be our guy before it's all said and done. So, yeah, I see him going past the third round, but he'll end up somewhere, and wherever he does, I think he'll end up making somewhat of a difference.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a successful NFL career just with how athletic and how talented he is. We found out yesterday Colby Harvell-Peel withdrew his name from the NFL draft pool. Found out that obviously didn't hear what he wanted to hear either from Oklahoma State staff or GMs or whoever when he put in his name to figure out what his worth could be to the NFL. So he decided he's coming back. Buy or sell that he has a similar season as Rodarius Williams in regards to benefiting his NFL draft stock, and he boosts somewhere between 2 and 4 rounds to his draft stock. Because I think if he went now, he'd be late third day, if he gets drafted at all.
Maybe. Yeah. I honestly, I don't think he'd be drafted right now if he were to go in this year. So that's just me. But I think the potential for that is there because he's coming back and then the experience is invaluable. He's seen these teams before, right, in the Big 12. He has that leadership ability. And he has the ability to make big plays. He's always around the ball. We talked about that. He always seems to know where to be, which is super important. But can he have, Rodarius, we know, just completely showed out like all season long. And yeah, Colby was injured. So I think that played a lot into it. So I guess I'll buy it if he stays healthy all season long. That means you can't be missing a game or two. You have to be in there from the first snap to the end. You got to play a full share of snaps. This has to be a full workload senior year for you. And he's going to have to improve in some areas a little bit, right? But I think he has that ability. And then with Rodarius gone, it's like, hey, man, I'm going to see a few more looks over here, even at the safety position. I'm going to have to almost at a point be able to make some extra plays here in the secondary this year. So, I'll buy it, but it's contingent on if he stays healthy all season long.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think the reason Rodarius, it was so impressive is he was talented. He had the capabilities his junior year. So when he came back and said, I'm sticking around for a senior year, I don't think many people were surprised because many people were like, you should have been back anyway. You shouldn't be announcing this. And then he goes out and he does what he did. There's, there weren't many people across the country that raised their draft stock as well as Rodarius Williams did. But with where Colby would have been if he'd have gone in this year, I'll buy it. Because I think if he would have, like you said, I think if he got drafted, it would have been late. But like we said yesterday, I thought that maybe he most likely would have been undrafted if it wasn't, late 7th round. But I could see Colby coming back next year if he's healthy, because he is talented. And I've said multiple times, there's not much that Colby needed to prove what he could do. Top end speed, which you can improve upon top end speed, but you've got coverage ability. He's a hard hitter. He can read an offense. All this and all that. He's got good closing ability. But I just felt like he didn't quite have enough. And you're in the Big 12. So you don't really get a ton of respect as a defender. So if you come back, and Oklahoma State defense has a similar year to this year that prove it wasn't a fluke, he easily raises anywhere between 2 and 4 rounds. I could see him being, late 3rd, early 4th round pick next year, maybe higher.
Yeah, no, he has, and it's little things, right? He has a chance to improve on some awareness, some ball skills, things like that. But I think he has a big time. The potential is huge for what he could do this season with returning.
Absolutely.
All right, so buy or sell. So we saw the New Orleans Saints got out. They not the way Drew Brees wanted to go. And also, how about Michael Thomas registering a big fat goose egg in the catch department, which is kind of seems like a hard thing to do given his ability.
Can guard Mike.
Yeah, you can guard Mike. So with can guard Mike showing up this past weekend, he puts out a tweet. I think it was yesterday, and it was a GIF of. I say GIF or GIF, by the way.
I said GIF.
Oh, get out of here! Yeah, you're fired. I'm fired. Okay. I have no ability to fire you, but you're fired.
We'll see y'all later. It's been fun.
He put out a GIF. Okay, if ever there were we're gonna split the country in two and just fight to the death. It's GIF or GIF.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I'm on the GIF side. Okay, so whatever you call it, he put it out, and it's of Tyreek Hill. During the Tampa Bay game when he did the phone call, right? Did the fake phone call and told the Tampa Bay fans that help was on the way. So he tweets that out, and everyone's like, "The heck does this mean? Like, are you going to Kansas City next year already? Like, dude, what?" And he quickly deleted the tweet, basically. But buy or sell that he sticks around and he is with the New Orleans Saints next year, because it's very likely that Drew Brees isn't your quarterback. Nobody knows who's going to be the quarterback. So does he remain with the Saints, or does he demand a release, a trade, and the Saints agree to that?
I'll sell that he stays, because you don't know what the quarterback situation is going to look like. Right now, obviously, if Drew Brees were to stick around for another year, which I was it yesterday or Friday, I'd said that I think he's gone. Just his mannerisms after the game and the wave into the crowd, and it almost seemed like, I appreciate everything you've done. My time here has come to an end. I think he's gone. I don't think he sticks around.
It was an absolutely disaster of a year. Absolute disaster of a year for Michael Thomas, right? He starts in the offseason, and he goes off on Drew Brees for talking about the Drew Brees support standing during the national anthem, right? He did all that. Yeah. I didn't think it was a great look. Like, I know he got people on his own team supported him, and Drew Brees was forced to apologize. I didn't think it was a great look, but he does that. Very first game of the year, he doesn't do anything in that game when he gets hurt. He's out for basically forever. Comes back late in the year when Drew Brees isn't even there. Notched a couple of 100-yard games still with Taysom Hill, but that was it. That was the limit to his success. Got hurt again, went on IR, came back for this game, and had no catches. Absolute forgettable year for Michael Thomas, who arguably last year the best wide receiver in the entire league, right? I mean, his catches were he was unbelievable. He was good for 12 catches a game, which you don't see, and it was insane. So if Drew Brees were back, I would for sure be like, yeah, he's going to be there, because the connection is, even though it was not great this year, if they get another full workload and everyone stays healthy, because if you think about what Michael Thomas, like everyone jokes he's the slant boy, right? All he does is run slants. Well, they're tailoring that to what Drew Brees can do. If you watch Drew Brees at all this season, his arm was completely shot. Yeah. So, of course, they're going to start doing that more with Michael Thomas and giving him that opportunity. Now, he signed a huge deal earlier with the Saints back in last season, actually last summer. It was 5 years, $100 million. Like, that's a pretty solid contract, right, for a wide receiver. So it's really up to the Saints if he's going to be gone or not. So I don't know if he like kind of pulls this demand towards the end of the offseason, like, hey, you guys got to get rid of me. Like, I could see, here's what I could see happening. If Taysom Hill were to become the guy, I could see Michael Thomas being like, I'm not going to play Taysom Hill.
Absolutely.
Couldn't you see that?
No.
Like, as the drama queen of Michael Thomas being like, I'm just not going to do it.
That's what I'm saying. If they got to have if Drew Brees doesn't come back, they got to go out and sign a Deshaun Watson.
Yeah,
they got to go get a talented quarterback that can win a Super Bowl.
Would he even stick around? Would he demand a release if it was Jameis Winston?
I would.
I mean, I think that
we found out pretty quick that Jameis was a really good college quarterback, and he's an average at best NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
He cannot win you a Super Bowl.
it just depends on what the Saints want to do. I mean, because if they get rid of, if Drew Brees isn't there, then they're already dealing with the quarterback situation. Do they want to add on top of that the loss of stability that you would have if Michael Thomas were healthy? He's having 2 more surgeries, by the way, this offseason. He's had the injury issues. They're juggling a lot of stuff right now. It could possibly be a year where you see no Drew Brees and no Michael Thomas, and all of a sudden a Saints team that was a game away from an NFC championship. That's a pretty quick turnaround, I would have to think, unless barring some miracle they get back, right? Yeah. A lot of crazy stuff there with that organization. Okay, real quick, I want to throw you this one.
I like this one.
It's a bonus one.
This is my favorite one.
Okay, buy or sell. We talk about, so James Harden, been with the Nets. By the way, since he's been with the Nets, balled out.
Not bad.
Right, him and KD working like everybody thought.
Yeah.
There's no Kyrie Irving yet. But we hear he's basically being forced to be back now with the Nets.
Yeah, and he's coming out now saying, he's real emotional videos, and this is why I left, and
blah, 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 man. I don't have any sympathy towards that.
Probably found out the world's not flat.
Yeah, right. He's like, I just realized.
Oh, my God, my world's been turned upside down.
I just realized. So buy or sell with what James Harden did, ultimately, everything that he did, right? Whether he actually got fat and out of shape or he faked it, or whether, and he was, like, refusing to talk to teammates and bad locker room stuff and all this, calling people out. Buy or sell that he set a really bad negative precedent for how to get out of an organization. That goes for anybody in sports.
Yeah, buy. 100% buy. Because you look at what he did when he was in Houston, right? Now, James Harden, it would be different if you were a second-tier player. You're a support player. You're the second guy off the bench. But James Harden is a superstar. He is one of the elite. He is one of the top 10, 15 players that you can look at and say, you are the face. Anywhere you go, you're probably going to be the face of the franchise. Once you didn't have a chance to win a championship, I need a superstar. Brought a superstar in, didn't work out. I want to be the guy. He can play second fiddle, but you're not bringing in a second fiddle. You're bringing in a superstar. It's not going to happen. Didn't work, got rid of that guy. Brought in Russell Westbrook. This has to be a match made in heaven. You guys are best friends. Didn't work out. Neither guy are there now, but Russell leaves, and James is still there, and all of a sudden he comes back. It's like 20 pounds heavier. It's ridiculous. And it's not wearing a fat suit. The dude gained like 20, 30 pounds. He can't stay out of the strip club. Starts beefing with the GM, coming up with fake stories. The GM can't afford, or the owner can't afford to pay the strippers, so he's digging for quarters in the car, right?
Yep.
It's just so bad. He's creating so much animosity. He's not talking to teammates. He's not talking to ownership. I got to get out. So you get rid of him. And all of a sudden, he shows up and he shows up in Brooklyn. He's lost all the weight. He's running fast again. He's clicking with teammates. He's scoring out, ridiculous, outrageous point totals. Back to being James Harden. That right there, especially with, you look at, and I'm young too, so I'm not trying to talk bad about younger people, and that I'm better than them. But you look at there are real prima donnas in some of these younger generations. They don't get what they want, they leave. They don't get this, they throw fit, whatever. And so if they sign a $40 million deal and it isn't all roses, the grass isn't as green as I was led to believe when I first signed this contract, you know what? Look at what James Harden did. I'm just as good as James Harden, whether they are or not. So I'm going to gain some weight. I'm going to throw a fit. I'm going to be a huge pain in the ass. And I'm going to get traded, and I'm going to find a better situation.
That's why I think that...
And it's not just basketball.
No.
I think you're going to see it across major sports unless you really nip it.
That's why it had to have been weird for the Texans, because it's happening in the same exact city, and they're like, it's on full display for Deshaun Watson to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, who's to say if Eric Bieniemy doesn't get hired and that's the last straw? We're already here. He wants to be demanded. He demands a trade, wants to get out. if they're like, no, well, then does Deshaun Watson gain 20 pounds? And does he start going to the media? He's already tweeting every day. Does he go to the media and say, my teammates are this and that, and my ownership, blah, blah, all this stuff? I feel like I completely agree. I buy it because everyone's going to take a page out of that book. And then you're right. You go to the athletes that don't get their way, and that's what's happening to Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Like, I feel for him in terms of the whole DeAndre Hopkins thing. Like, that never should have happened. But other than that, like, him not getting his way is what this is.
Well, and you look at, and you can go back to 7-on-7. You can go to AAU. You can go to Travel League Baseball. These kids that are, what's the Elite 11? You can go to the Elite 11 competition. All these tournaments and all these. And I enjoy this stuff. We cover recruiting, and I like going to these events. It's fun to watch. But you have a certain tier of players in every sport when they're 14, 15, 16 years old that are God tier. They're put on a pedestal as 14. These kids can't even drive yet. These kids don't even have a driver's license. And they're being regarded as the greatest person to ever strap it on. It's a dangerous precedent, because when they get to college, they are good, and that's the thing. They are good. They're talented enough. They go to college. They do really well there. You go to the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, whatever, and you're even better. But guess what? You get paid $100 million to do it.
You inflate their egos, and they come into a situation where they see what James Harden did.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good point. That could trickle down for, it may not work, obviously, when you're somewhat younger like that, but it's like, hey, if you get into
well, you're telling me that you look at Clemson quarterback.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence. Yeah.
You're telling me that if a Trevor Lawrence type quarterback, a once-in-a-generational type quarterback, is 16 years old and he's not happy, that he's not just going to quit and go play for IMG?
Well, and that's the thing is, and if you get into the pros now, you look at what James Harden did, and it's like, hey, I can just basically screw the organization and say and do whatever I want. That'll force their hand, because look, it worked over there. Yeah, I completely agree. It's dangerous precedent set in sports. James Harden, we've seen things kind of like this before, but James Harden took it to the next level with everything he did. We come back in the afternoon sports drive. Colin Cowherd had something interesting to say regarding if Patrick Mahomes will be back or not for the AFC Championship game coming up this Sunday. Find out what that was next.
Levitating off the blacktop. Used to struggle getting started, now I can't stop. Used to be the quiet kid in the sandbox, now it's hands up every time that your man rocks. They ought to stop me coming in again. You mad? You thought we were synonyms? Too bad, that's the water you're getting in. You're too fat for the sharks that you're swimming in. From where I'm sitting, contenders are looking like fruit spinning around in the blender. Hardly a snack when I'm here looking for dinner. I eat them, delete them, they're barely beginners. Main course is my main.
Welcome back in Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster here on this Tuesday. All right, so I think, I always like to take audio from different shows a lot of times and play it on here and like react to it. It's always fun. Well, Colin Cowherd, as you sent me today, on his show, decided to throw out a take basically on what the NFL should do with Patrick Mahomes regarding should he get the chance to play or not here against the Bills, and when will he be ready to go, because he's currently in concussion protocol. By the way, last I saw was that he did pass some tests that he needed to today, and signs are looking good, but he's still in protocol. So everyone can kind of hold their breath still, but it's looking like it's okay at the moment. This is what Colin Cowherd had to say.
But we want Mahomes against Josh Allen, right? Like that's reasonable. And I'm sitting here this morning thinking, if I'm the NFL, Patrick Mahomes is going through protocol. I find the day Patrick Mahomes can play, that's when we play. Why not?
So he's basically like, hey, even if he doesn't get released this week, the NFL, because there is an open week before the Super Bowl, the NFL should push it back to where he can play, because you want that matchup with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, right? And as a Chiefs fan, I mean, I'm like, hey, if they said it, like, I wouldn't be like, I wouldn't be super upset about it. However, as a football fan, National Football League, it's a dangerous precedent. We talked about it earlier.
100%.
because basically from here on out, the NFL would have to say, and I think they could probably twist it to where it's like in this same situation, they would have to say, hey, from now on, if this happens again and it's in the AFC or NFC championship game and the quarterback can't go because he's in concussion protocol or injured, but we know that it's possible he gets cleared the next week, then we're going to allow that to happen, where that open week can be used as a time where you can push back that game to mean that it has both quarterbacks ready to go. Now, I think if this were a COVID issue, if Patrick Mahomes tested positive for COVID this week, would they actually consider moving the game back? I think that might be a little different. The reasoning is because they could say, hey, it's a once in a lifetime deal we're got going on here with the pandemic, and we know this will never happen again like this, most likely. So we have an open week. I always like to put these situations out there because that'd be one thing. How interesting would it be if both quarterbacks were to come down with COVID and they're like, let's move it back a week? So if it were a COVID issue, I think you'd have a much better chance of seeing this happen. However, with it being an injury, the NFL they would simply come out and then say, hey, no, it's, you got to deal with it. You guy got hurt. That sucks. The timing's terrible, but you got to play with what you got.
Yeah, you want to talk about a dangerous precedent.
Yeah.
Pat Mahomes is injured, and so the NFL comes out and says, you know what, guys, Buffalo, we know you got a chance to make the Super Bowl, but we need money. We're gonna push this back, even if it's just 2 or 3 days.
Well, and wouldn't they have to do the same thing for the NFC?
They would have to. I would think so.
You could have a competitive advantage.
If you're going to push the AFC Championship game back because Pat Mahomes has a concussion, or like an injured ligament or strain or whatever it is you want to call it, whatever it actually is, then let's say you play that game on a Tuesday or Wednesday, I think you would have to move the NFC Championship game back as well. Now, like you said, if it were COVID, then, especially if you're the Chiefs, you could be like, well, listen, Pat Mahomes, he's tested positive. Well, Pat was around the offensive line, and he took the receivers to dinner, so all these guys have a chance with contact tracing. Sorry, we have to push the game back. Go back through the annals of every sport throughout the history of sport. Not many times has there been a game where it gets pushed back due to injury. I'm sorry. You want to talk about spoiled, rotten me generation? That would be it.
Well, and
sorry, Pat Mahomes isn't playing, so sorry, Bills, but we're gonna push this game back a week. I just don't care.
And there's already plenty of people that are on the side of, Mahomes, he gets whatever he wants because he's Patrick. But like, if this happened, you'd send it over the top.
Can you imagine? This is the example you need to think of. Imagine you go back 6 years when Tom Brady was really in his prime. Tom Brady goes down the week before the AFC Championship.
Yeah.
If they were to postpone the AFC Championship game so the Patriots had a fair advantage, and that way they could beat the Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning or whenever it was that he played, you're telling me that fans would not absolutely lose it and boycott? You're telling me the Indianapolis Colts would not file a lawsuit against the league?
Yeah, especially if you are the opposing team.
I'm telling you, Buffalo would absolutely lose it.
Now,
if you're Buffalo, you want to win, you want to beat Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
But if there's a chance Pat Mahomes isn't playing, you're not complaining.
No.
You're not crying about it.
Yeah, and it would be the same way, right? If Josh Allen, if you were a Chiefs fan and Josh Allen was out, and they're like, we're move it back a week to let him play.
I bet you that though, that if Josh Allen were the one that were injured, probably wouldn't be having too many of these conversations.
You would set it up for way too much backlash, and it would be, like you said, a precedent that, knowing the NFL, how they decide things, it could be something they're like, it's just a 1 year thing.
Yeah.
Because they do want ratings. If Patrick Mahomes is declared out for next week,
I probably wouldn't watch as much of it.
It's not going to draw your ratings that you had hoped. Obviously, there's still people like, can he do it? But then by halftime, if the Chiefs are down by 28 points because Chad Henne can't move the ball, then there's nobody watching like they would all the way through.
Yeah, anything is not possible in 2 weeks.
Yeah, so you're really hoping from that standpoint for the NFL. You're like, please, Mahomes, tell me he's going to be good to go because we need to keep these ratings up, which have been great. But the good news is, again, that I will reiterate, that it's the nerve that was strained basically in his neck. So it wasn't a technical concussion is kind of what we're learning. And I'd said that if it was, if it was a full-on concussion, you'd be dealing with a lot more issues and trying to get him back from that. The league would have to clear him, which is a hurdle in its own self. An independent neurologist would have to sign off, and you'd be really crossing your fingers. With this, though, I think there's a much better chance that he actually gets the green light. When we come back on the Afternoon Sports Drive to round out the show here on this Tuesday, we'll tell you what we learned.
Feel like I'm gonna puke, cause my taxes are due. Do my password begin with a 1 or a 2? Been a hell of a ride, but I'm thinking it's time to grow.
Metronome.
Man, I'm up to something. Ooh-dee-la-dee-do, thank you all for coming. I hope you like the show, cause it's on the
we hope you like the show here. It's the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. We're rounding out the show on this
If you don't
Tuesday.
like it, it's too damn bad.
Too damn bad.
Deal with it. Because we ain't changing.
That's right. Change for nobody.
Change your diaper, maybe.
Yeah. Come on now.
Baby.
Yeah, come on. All right, so we'll round out the show. I'll tell you what we learned here on this Tuesday, which, Zach, I've got a good one for you. You're going to really like
I'm looking forward to it.
You're going to really like it.
It's coming to an end. Time to find out if these two got any smarter.
The question is, what did you learn?
Let's find out what the guys learned today on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Well, I learned something today.
Well, it's everybody's favorite time of the year in the football season, which means the Super Bowl is only 2 games away. Technically 1 game away. So I've got ticket prices. You ready? Ooh. It's always good stuff. Right now, they're relatively cheap here.
Okay.
You can buy them for $7,750 a piece.
That's all?
That's it.
Is that like nosebleeds, or is that like mid-level?
Yeah, that's actually like as cheap as I could find. So
you're like behind the pillar.
Well, it's because
garage.
And it's all socially distanced, right? Yeah. So that's kind of my thing is like, if I went to a Super Bowl, I would want it to be like the full-on, crowded-out experience, craziness.
4,000 teenagers on the field for halftime.
Yeah, jumping around to the weekend. Yeah,
they've never seen a football game in their life. Yeah. But damn it, Britney Spears is on stage.
We're gonna release you to the stage. Yeah, it's always happening. But what the thing is that I've always thought was interesting about the Super Bowl is because you bring in as many fans as possible, but at the same time you're like, it's always in a location that's usually pretty neutral. Occasionally you'll run into, like, if this year it happened to be where in Miami, right, and the Bucks are there, like, you would think there'd be more Bucks fans than anybody else. But I always thought, because like last year too, it's in Miami, and you've got the Chiefs and you've got the 49ers.
Yeah.
So if anyone's coming in that's not around that area, you're coming across country, most likely, and there's no such thing as really a full-on home field advantage and you want to keep it somewhat neutral, but there's not like this huge amount of Chiefs fans or Niners fans or whoever's going to be there like you would see in any other normal game. So it always sort of kind of took away from the atmosphere for me compared to like a regular home game would be or a rivalry game or whatever. It's always that, you get to that final point of the season and it's like, well, we just don't quite have the fan base that we usually have. So that's always been a little different. But if you want to go, dish out $7,000. You can go sit there. You have to have the mask on the whole time, and you can sit wherever 6 feet apart from your other people and try to enjoy the game, I guess.
I've not being a huge NFL fan, I've never really had a desire to go to a Super Bowl game. I would want to go, to experience like a full-on, 70,000 people and the halftime show and the whole shebang, because it's unlike really anything else. Would really, really want to go to a World Series game.
Agreed. But you would have to. It's kind of the same thing for any championship style game. Yeah, at this point, with the way ticket prices are, you have to either be fairly wealthy.
Yes.
Or you luck into one of those giveaways or something, right? With the tickets.
Luck.
Yeah.
Well, the Chiefs game, I want to say, there was someone that had posted tickets of the AFC Championship game prices, and like the cheapest ticket up in the nosebleeds, like the last section, was like $780. That's not fun.
I've been in that section in Arrowhead. It's a long ways up,
especially for $800.
Yeah,
no thanks.
I would rather watch it on TV.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So it's sticking with money. We've got
of course.
We have the evaluations, the valuations of NBA basketball franchises.
Ooh, okay.
Can you guess the most expensive, not the price, but the most valuable NBA franchise?
The New York Knicks.
$5.4 billion.
The reason why I say that is because I remember it was, I think, a year ago or something. They still were.
Yeah.
And I was like, how?
$5.4 billion.
It shocked me to death. So still are $5.4 billion.
And then and this is what's crazy too. The second team in second place is the Golden State Warriors, which makes sense. All the championships they've won recently and Steph Curry and all that stuff. The Warriors were purchased back in July of 2010 for $450 million. They are now estimated a whopping $5.2 billion.
Got the Warriors.
You
on
want
a
to talk
steal.
about a return? Good Lord! And then you get the Lakers, 5.1. This one actually surprised me. This one really surprised me. The Brooklyn Nets are in fourth at $3.4 billion.
I was actually going to guess that another New York, would have been up there with Brooklyn. So.
Yeah, it's surprising. The New York aspect doesn't, but the fact that it's Brooklyn, that kind of surprised me.
You have the Clippers there on that list? Mm-hmm. Where are they at?
They are 8th at 2.6.
Okay. Interesting.
But you got Boston at 3.1, Chicago 3.1, the Rockets 2.7, the Clippers 2.6, the Mavs 2.5, and 10th Toronto 2.5.
All that money for the New York Knicks,
and you still can't win. I wonder where the Thunder are. Let me find the Thunder on this. All right, so I've got them. Can you guess where they are?
I'm gonna say, give me number 18.
22.
Ooh,
22 at $1.66 billion.
Okay.
The team in dead last that just no one cares about. Who are they?
That nobody cares about?
Yeah.
Minnesota?
They are 28th.
Ooh.
They're third to last. You got the New Orleans Pelicans.
Okay.
At $1.3 billion.
Yep, no more AD. Nobody cares.
Every single NBA franchise is worth at least $1.35 billion.
There you go. You're going to learn if you can impress your friends with that information, the work groups. You heard it here on the
Who's
Afternoon
one of
Sports
the
Show.
worst teams that's worth the most amount of money?
When that question pops up in natural conversation. Yeah,
oh, yeah.
It will.
Yeah.
It's been the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. That's Zach Lancaster. I'm Patrick Wheeler. Hope everybody enjoyed the show today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, 3 o'clock, to kick it off again with Tom Dorado. Stay tuned later on this evening. We've got Perry Maroon Wrestling coming around at 6:30-ish. So make sure to tune in for that here on 105.1. We'll have that. It's homecoming for Perry. So myself and Jeff Lancaster will have that coming your way on the airwaves. Should be good stuff. Until then, everybody have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.